Three, two, one. Hey guys, it's Todd with Project 9. Welcome to Personal Development Hacks. Here we focus on if you want more from your income or your relationships and you'd like a simple way to get there within about 8 weeks, that's where we can help. So we've got another great episode today. Our special guest is Michelle Vandepass, so I will bring her in. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, thank you for having me. This is so much fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So, for the viewing audience that does not know you or know anything about you, please take a few minutes, introduce yourself, and let us know what you're focused on.
So I'm a lifelong entrepreneur since I was little, right? It's one of those things that was probably in my genes. But since my mid-20s, I've been doing consulting and coaching for marketing. And that has morphed into book publishing. So I'm a book publisher, but that is part of what I do. That's a big overview umbrella of marketing. So I help people market their businesses, market themselves, up level, be more visible, not just for entrepreneurs, though. It's interesting. And I think maybe we're going to talk about that, like for business professionals too, what they can do to up level internally and out in the world.
Yeah. Well, and it's, fortunately or unfortunately, obviously for entrepreneurs and coaches and stuff like that, like a huge part of what we do is marketing. Like, you don't want to be a coach that's in the witness protection program where no one can find you. That does not do us any good. But you're right. Even people that are like, they're professionals or whatever, but they're wanting to get their name out there or, become just more marketable in with whatever they're doing. That's where you have to self-promote and you have to know how to do it correctly so that, you're not looked at as egocentric or a braggart or whatever, but you put value in yourself. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, and polished. If you're looking for a new job, I don't write resumes, but I can help you up level your persona out there online, right? So if you're looking for a new job, that's all polished. But also, lots of people write books to establish themselves as an expert in their industry or to share something or just an inspirational book that they may or may not ever use for an entrepreneurial reason. They just want to write a book because they have knowledge.
Right. Yeah. So in the years that you've been in publishing, have you focused on, or do you see more of people that are like telling stories about personal journeys or inspirational journeys or stuff like that? Or is it more of like the fiction, lack of a better term, like the crime dramas or the fantasies or whatever?
Right. Yeah. So I specialize in nonfiction. That's where my background has been for the last 25 years in publishing. I have published fiction books and I have consulted with a lot of authors about how to self-publish or find an agent or find a publisher for fiction books. So I do dabble in that realm. And some of the people on my team are fiction authors, which is super cool. But I personally focus on nonfiction. Inspirational memoir was huge. It's not as big now. People are really looking for personal development hacks and those kinds of things, right? But part of that may be somebody's inspirational story or their memoir of what took them 40 years to overcome trauma or whatever. We have tools available to us now that we didn't have 40 years ago. And so that story might still inspire somebody, but hopefully they can use some of the tools that we have now to either overcome trauma or just be bigger, better version of yourself. I hate to say better, more aligned with who you want to be.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think to your point, it's like if it inspired you, it's going to inspire others.
Yeah.
And regardless of how long ago it happened, or if it was in the 80s or whatever, I mean, people are still reading, like, autobiographies and stuff written in the 1800s,
Oh,
and
for
still
sure.
finding huge value in it. And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think for people that are writing about, like, overcoming adversity or past traumas and how they've gotten through it with intent to either tell that story or inspire others that might be going through something similar, but they don't have the end goal being getting into like a coaching role or a speaking role.
Yeah.
I think a big part of that is for them personally is an outlet to be able, because it's almost like you're telling someone about what you've gone through and stuff like that, and that writing of it can be that outlet that allows you to just kind of let everything out into a format that goes out. So
Yeah, we want to make sure that in that case, if you've been through, like, I have published books of immigrants who've had really tough times, right? People who have escaped war, people who, I'm sorry to say, someone who was imprisoned in a box for a while, like really some horrific stories, right? We want to make sure that, number one, that person has whatever support they need while they're writing the book. And this is just one small genre, so we'll talk about other stuff,
right.
right? But number one, they have to have support because it's going to bring all that up again. So it's cathartic, and not all of that may end up in the book. We want to make sure that the author has support as they're writing those kinds of stories, that it comes across in the end result as inspirational, helping other people. And to what you were saying, sometimes just writing the book is enough, right?
Mhm.
If it helps one person, that could be a win, right? That could be a personal win, a win for the other person. So there's a lot of reasons to write your story or write a book. For, you mentioned coaching. In this particular genre, very cathartic, very healing. But you want to make sure that you've got, if you've been through something horrific, that you have support and not just like get a quarter of the way through and like break down, right? Because some of these
Right.
authors have been through things I'd never, could have imagined would happen in our world.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's absolutely right. And you're right. If it can help one person, who, it doesn't even have to be the same thing. It can just be
No,
similar enough, or
just
the
inspirational.
story can echo enough that they're like, you know what, I can get that. So I had a guest on, God, a while back, but what was he? He was one of the Sit Go Six. So
Yeah,
he was imprisoned
right,
in Venezuela for
right,
5 years,
right,
and he has gotten out. And he's become a speaker and a coach, and he wrote a book. And from my talking to him, he's like, there's still 62 other people, just U.S. citizens, not to mention, like, you know, in the UK and Australia and the other countries, that are basically illegally detained in other countries and being used as a political negotiating tool for some of these people, for some of these governments. And you know he wrote a book just about his path and his what he went through and the challenges and ultimately the successes. But directly, his story is, it goes well beyond just the 62 people. It's
right.
like, then it expands to their families, then it extends to other families who have gone through really any form of loss, or you know even if it's not a permanent loss but part-time, to be able to draw parallels out of kind of what you feel, what you go through, and things like that, to be able to look at it and say that actually speaks to me. So,
Yeah.
um, but obviously, he, as he was going through that, had support. You know, he had his family. They've formed a community of all of these families across the globe that have family, friends, loved ones that are being detained. Um, that they have that support system that's there, because it's all these people that are like, yeah, I'm going through this, and this is the side of that I'm on. Either I was there or I waited while they were there.
Yeah.
So but it's great to hear you talk about, like, making sure that people have the support if that's the route that they want to take, because you're right, it's writing has that powerful effect. It's like you start putting pen to paper, and you start to relive some of those memories, not intentionally, but just
Right.
they start to come up. So
The other side of that is, if you're writing a book that is business based, or you are a coach and want to build your business, or it's more um, uh, let's just say less about you and more about facts. Here's how you lose weight. Here's why you need acupuncture. Here's how to choose your doctor, whatever, right? Those kinds of books also are incredibly up leveling internally, personally. Like, they will work on your own personal development, because what happens is, as you're writing, even if you're working with a ghostwriter, as many of those kinds of books do, or a personal coach, you get really super clear about what it is you really stand for, what you believe in. If you're writing about, how to choose a doctor, that just came out of my brain, as an example, you're going to be really super clear about what you're going to put on paper and what you stand for and what's going to go out in print, that people are going to say, oh, that's what Michelle stands for. That's what she really believes. And so there's a requirement for you to really understand yourself. And you may not know that going in. That's going to be a process of discovery as you write your book, for many, many people.
yeah, and I'm sure there's been plenty of people who have started the process with whatever their intention was, whatever their path was, their point of clarity, that started writing and went, actually, I'm a little bit different.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're right. It's that self realization of yourself and what's important to you. And writing can sometimes help you not just discover it, but adjust it.
Yeah.
Just like with me and my programs, it's like your goals are going to change.
Right.
They are. It's just, my goals at 48 are different than my goals at 38, 28. Crap, when I was 18, I thought I was going to play Major League Baseball. That was my goal. And then coaches kind of looked at me and went, no, you're not. So, but you have to be open to those changes as you go through it, because it is a path of a lot of self-discovery as much as it is sharing inspiration with others, or, like you said, sharing facts with others about picking a doctor and stuff like that, because you may discover, like, ooh, I did not base this on the right choices, or what doesn't necessarily agree with you right now.
Yeah, you start writing, and then as you write, you get clearer, or as you work with your book coach, you get clearer. And yeah, I mean, it's fascinating. Every author's different, every person's different. And some people go through intense mindset shifts, and others just tweak a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the most important things that we've talked about so far has been, like, and you just said it, about clarity. And I think no matter what you're embarking on or are in the middle of or whatever, you're going to have stuff, be it society, loved ones, family, friends, just life in general that's going to, not through intention, but just they're going to cloud that point of clarity that this is where I'm going, and those clouds and that fog will gather. And so it's that's something that I make very clear to people is like you have to be crystal clear and consistently remind yourself on that clarity of where you're going. It's not going to be a straight line, but don't get the shiny object syndrome and start bouncing all over the place, because if you start doing that, you're making no progress. You're making lateral moves the whole time, and you're not actually getting to where you want to go.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think there are times when we can explore. So I love shiny object syndrome, right? Because we all get it. And the question is it a momentary, ooh, that sounds interesting, let me go explore that, or does it veer you totally off course? Is it something where you're um, investigating and maybe there's some information? And I know that you talk about this in 8 weeks, right? You have 8 weeks where you like to transform. you know um, I've gone down all kinds of weird paths in my life, and some of them have turned out really great. But the more we can discern what's really shiny object syndrome for us, and in the context of a book, I recommend people write their back cover first. And I usually, when I'm working with an author, will sit down and write the back cover because it succinctly puts in just a paragraph really what you want that book to be about. And that stops the veering off course. Doesn't mean you can't explore other concepts, but it helps give a container of what the book's really about.
Right. Yeah, and I think you're right. Like when you first sit down and early in that process of wanting to write a book or wanting to share or whatever, like that, oftentimes that's your clearest moment
Yeah,
is right then, and it's typically after you get into something that's where the shiny objects start showing up. But at the outset, and I love that guidance of write the back cover, because it gives you a landing point. Like
yeah,
all of this stuff, this is where I'm going. Like this is my point, my intention, my focus, and all this stuff is going to come in, and you have to just know that ahead of time. Otherwise, you're going to have a 50 chapter book that like ends up talking about Harry Potter when you were talking about picking a doctor, and it's like, where are we going with this?
yeah. Not if they're working with me, Todd. But yeah, you're right.
I've never watched Harry Potter.
Yeah,
That's so
people go down all kinds of um, weird tangents, right? But not just in writing a book, and sometimes in life too.
well, yeah. I mean, a book is you hate to say like a microcosm of life, but it truly is. It's like you're going through a journey to with an end point, but the difference between, well, for most people is, and I think that's where a lot of people get it wrong, is they think that, well, with a book, if I write the back cover first, I have an end point. And in life, I don't know what that end point is going to be. And it's like, then you need to rethink it and instead of starting today and building your goal towards something, why don't you start with what you want and build back to today? So that way, it's like every step that you're backing along that line is all stemming from what you're ultimately wanting, needing, desiring that at that end point. Have you ever had anyone do that? Write a book backwards?
Lots of people write a book backwards. And there are lots of programs out there, and I also have taught this, where you get a very strict structure, and you have all your title, your chapter headings, and you know exactly what you want to be in the book, and you just sit down and you write to that book. And that's one way to write a book, and you'll write a book quickly that way, and it'll be a good kind of factual book, business book, nonfiction book. And you can do your life like that. But I'm going to throw a little wrench here in your thesis and say life doesn't always work that way. It's a little more magical. And and so when you like put out your goals and you say this is where I want to be in a decade, the universe has a way of throwing wrenches in. And usually it's for our good. We may not always see it. Or if we choose to view it that it's for our good, we can choose not to be a victim if it's something that seems bad at the time, right? And use mindset and positive thinking and like deal with what is, right? To move through it. That I find that similar process probably with your podcast, but definitely with books and when I've done speaking and so forth. When I speak, I have my outline, I have my agenda, I practice my stories, but sometimes there's some magic that happens in writing a book and speaking and doing a podcast and life in general. And so not every tangent's a bad thing. I say, have your goals, have your plans, work toward them, but let go of the outcome and let the magic happen too.
Yeah, it's the best guidance I've ever received with exactly what you're talking about is, if you look at your life as a flight from LA to Miami, there are only 2 times on that entire flight where the plane is going straight, and that's takeoff and landing. The rest of that time is all about course corrections. People always talk about, well, he's a good pilot. He flew a great flight. I'll be the first to tell you, the pilot didn't fly a thing. All they did was course correct. There's a storm, there's wind, there's bumps, and they just make course corrections when faced with obstacles or changes that come at them. They just course correct. And it's the same thing with your goals. And regardless of if you start today moving forward, if you start with the end and you build backward, it doesn't matter. You have to know that there are going to be things along the way because you're doing something new. And the great thing about it is if you want something new, you have to do something different.
Yeah.
And you have to know that if you don't do anything different, you're just avoiding a lot of these obstacles that come at your way. And you can just look at it and say, well, it's just life. But if it's new, you're going to face new stuff. And it's important that you have a plan ahead of time so that you know what has held you back in the past, what potentially could, if it's something that's brand new to you, and just come up with some loosely laid plans as to, okay, when this starts happening, this is what I'm thinking, knowing that could change. But if you have a plan, at least you have a plan of attack.
Yeah.
And that's just coming up with the plan. That's progress. And, no one's saying you're going to get, 100% better on the first week. It's 1% every single day. And if you can just get 1% better every single day, it adds up and it starts to accumulate, and you'd be surprised what that adds up to. Because if you think about it, if you just get 1% better every day, at the end of a year, you're 37 times better. I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot. But you didn't do anything but just focus on, I was here yesterday, today I'm here. I can do that. And then you do it the next and the next and the next. It starts to add up pretty quick.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just like writing a book. It's one letter after the other, one word after the next. And
that's right. And sometimes it really is, you get up and you just write a sentence and that's all you could do today. Right. Yeah.
It's one sentence more than you had the day before.
That's right.
So, all right. So, Michelle, I'm going to give you the opportunity. Just take a couple minutes here, let people know how they can get a hold of you. I'll
Oh,
bring that
thanks.
up.
Yeah, michellecoaches.com. It's right there. That's kind of my personal page where you can find my social, a place to book a call with me. Shoot, you can even text me there. I've got a phone number there. You can email me. You can shout out, say nice things, send me chocolate. Don't don't say anything mean. If you don't like me, just move on, right? But I love to talk with people who are thinking about writing a book or need some more visibility or want to polish their online presence. Anything around it's all connected, right? It's all connected, and I'd love to talk with you. So reach out. There's no obligation. It doesn't mean we're going to work together or not. It just means let's talk, have a conversation, see where it goes.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So, and then for us here, guys, so if you do want more out of your income, your relationships, and you want a simple way to get there in, as little as 8 weeks, that's where we're here to help. So just go.project9life.com, schedule a call. It's a complimentary call. It'll take about a half hour. We just want to talk about where you're at, where you want to go, and how we can help you get there. Most it's going to cost you, to Michelle's point, is it's a half hour. It's a half hour of your day to get some clarity on what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And then for this podcast and all of the prior ones, if you just go to YouTube and subscribe to the channel at Project 9 Life, you can see this and all of the prior ones that we've recorded. And it's a worthwhile listen because we've had some great guests on and some great topics of discussion, including this one. And you can get a lot out of it. So just go there to subscribe. So now, besides because you said in the beginning, you were talking about your background and what you deal with is a lot of marketing and, visibility and polish and stuff like that. So just talk a little bit more about if you have a client that maybe isn't writing a book, but they're looking to polish or
Yeah.
to gain some visibility, some of the things that you deal with that.
Yeah. So the first thing I look at is, care if you're going to speak your language. What are your goals, right? Where do you want to end up? Why are you doing it? Do you want a new job? Do you want to go add speaking to your, your whatever it is you're doing, your business, or do you want to? Are you starting a business? Do you have a side hustle, as they say? What is the purpose, right? The number one thing that people come to me with is just overwhelmed. They don't know where to start. They're totally overwhelmed. They hear they're supposed to be on TikTok or Threads or whatever new one is coming up. And do they need to be? And do they have to go grab their name? And does their name have to be really cute? I love your 9 Lives thing. And that's where people are. It's there's so much information and they think they have to do it all. I think I have to do it all, right? And then we get an overwhelm and then we do nothing. It's like analysis paralysis, or it's like, oh my God, I just want to go back to bed today. And so my job is to really do some of what you're talking about. Why are you doing this? What's the end goal? What would be the best outcome? What maybe would be not a win, if you didn't get a new job or you didn't get a speaking career out of this, would that be the not win here? And if that happens, what would be the win? What's the best case scenario? What's the next? I reach for the sky scenario and then maybe a best case scenario, right? And then we look at what's the style of the person. Some people are really good at TikTok and other people really suck. And it doesn't mean anything about whether you have to be on TikTok. It has to do with, is that your style? Is that something you're going to excel at? Is that going to feel really fun to you? If it doesn't feel fun, you're going to give up after a week and then it's not really worth it. You're better focusing on what you want to do and what feels fun. Sometimes learning new things doesn't feel fun, but if you can think about, actually, if I learn it, it's going to be fun. If I get through it, it's going to be fun. Learning scales on the piano is not fun, but if you do that, you get to the next level, which can be really super fun, right? And
Hmm.
so we kind of talk about, does it not sound fun because it's just the drudgery of getting through the beginning stage, or where do you land on that? There are a lot of ways, though, to market yourself, even today, not online. Not everybody has to be online, right? There's plenty of corner stores that do really well, and plenty of mom and pop shops and tire stores that get their business not online, right? There's still old-fashioned marketing techniques that still work. And so I work with mostly people who are like, I want to change this, or I have this goal. I don't want to be on 27 social media platforms. Help me figure out another way. Could be podcasts. It's one way I like to promote myself and my business, right? And I'm not real, I am on TikTok, but I don't love it. um, and, but it could be like volunteering somewhere locally at, for instance, your chamber of commerce or some organization locally where you're connecting with your community and making connections that way. That can be a natural, holistic way to market yourself that's not pounding the pavement and doing sales calls every day.
Right. Yeah, and like with social media, just because we were talking about that, because there's so many different options out there, and you don't have to be everywhere, but you need to at least do some research to figure out like where is your target audience,
Right.
where are they, because they, like for me, they're not on TikTok.
Right.
Their kids are, but you know, they're not. Um, and so figure out like where that target audience, and it could be if you're a coach or a speaker or something, find out where the people that are looking for that go. If it's you just want to increase your visibility within your industry or your company, then figure out like where are the people that are in this industry, like where are they hanging out? Where are they spending their time on social media? Or are they at all?
Right.
And you know, don't do something just because you feel that you have to. Like, don't jump on Snapchat and grab your name if your target audience and everyone that you're talking to and that you want to associate with is not there, because then you're just then that frustration starts to build. Like, I'm spending all this time on Snapchat and I'm sending out like all this content, or I'm doing all these things, and I have 0 followers. Well, it's because your average people there are 16 to 18 and whatever. But they might be spending their time on LinkedIn. They might be spending their time in not just on Facebook, but in certain groups that are on
Right.
Facebook. Uh,
Absolutely.
so, you need to be smart about how you're going about that, like your point, like that self marketing, be it for visibility or business purposes or whatever. Spend your time wisely and spend it so that you actually get the return that you're looking for, not just so that you can have the string of all the social media things across the bottom of your email, and 95% of the people that are seeing it are like, I don't even know what this symbol is. What is this?
Or
Because
even worse is you've got all those on the bottom of the email and they don't link correctly.
yeah, people are just sitting there clicking away at it, and it's like going nowhere, and they're like, I don't
Or you
even know.
created your website and you didn't actually go check all the links on your website, right? Because that's the kind of small thing that you need to pay attention to.
Yeah, and that's where someone like yourself and not me, like Me and technology, I have someone that I pay to do all that stuff for me. But someone like you, it's like you think about that stuff.
Yeah,
And people can go through a little checklist or whatever, and it's like, okay, if this is the route that we're going to go, here's 10 things that you need to make sure work properly, that you have set up,
absolutely.
whatever, um, so that you don't create distrust and enemies where you're wanting to create people that like you and friends,
Yeah,
because a link doesn't work or they click it and they go to someone else's stuff or whatever. Um, so there's always a benefit to having a guide that knows a lot of the intricacies of what you're looking to do and what you're about.
absolutely. Absolutely. And it doesn't have to be overwhelming. You don't need that whole string of social media like we're talking about. So,
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes it's as simple as like you know a, a Facebook, an email, and a phone number.
yeah,
That's it. And if you don't want to publish your phone number, don't.
yeah,
Then just put, here's my email, and create an email. Gmail does them for free. Try and get it as close to what you're talking about as possible. But if you have a name like mine, it's very common. That's taken pretty much everywhere. But it was amazing how easily I found every aspect for Project Nine Life,
right.
because it was unique, and like, so I've got emails and stuff like that. But um, there's always a benefit to the coaching. But you're right. I think a lot of people are hesitant to jump into it because of uncertainty, fear. That they're doing something that they're not comfortable with, and they're not comfortable being uncomfortable. But that's where growth happens. Growth happens in uncomfort, not in comfort.
Yep.
So
And if you don't lean into it, the 2x4 comes from the universe to kind of say, wake up, you know. So leaning into the uncomfortness, is that a word? The
it is now.
uncomfortableness, uh, helps you kind of move through it with a little more ease. Um, Rather than, there are days when we all want to go back to bed, but for the most part, lean into it and know
Yeah.
that it's part of your own growth cycle.
Yeah, and just you have to go into it knowing in the back of your head, like, okay, I'm going to do this. This makes me uncomfortable, but I'm going to do it. And then you do it. The next time, it's going to be that much easier. The next time, it's going to be even easier. And it's not because it's getting easier, it's because you're growing into these different levels and roles of fam- familiarity with whatever it is you're doing. I mean, like, take you and I mean, we thrive in putting ourselves out there. I mean, podcasts, websites, social media, like, I put my face and my brand and everything as many places as possible. And when I was first doing it, everyone has imposter syndrome, right? Like, who's going to like this? Who's even going to know about this? But the more and more you do it, it's like you just do it. And it's like I'm fine with that. And now it's like, what's the next evolution? What's next? What's next? What's next? And you start to thrive on going to the next level instead of being comfortable with status quo.
Mm, yeah, yeah. And I think sometimes just doing it gives your internal self a win, that even if there's not a next time on the same thing, you've got that win. You feel better. It's like, oh, I did that. It's like I tell a story about when I did my TED Talk. I was like in a ball on the floor the night before. I'm like, there's no way I'm doing this. I'm not, my family had to literally push me out the door and get me there because I had imposter syndrome, but also just like fear and panic. And what am I going to say? And I don't even know my speech and all of that. And, then eventually I got out there and I got on the other side. And it's like, oh, okay, I did that. Right.
Yep.
And it's like, wow, I did that. That to me, it was a big thing. And it's like, wow. And so when you have those wins, you're like, okay, I did that. So, speaking in front of 10 people at a coffee shop's nothing now. Right.
Right. Yeah. And that's those wins, regardless of if they're like your reasoning or you sought after it or as a result of it. But as you gain those wins, your confidence goes up, your energy goes up. You start to, I just talking to other people, like you start to vibrate at a different level of, just attracting that and then desiring the next opportunity. And that desire for growth and more, it's not only are you stretching for it, but it's pulling you up and you're being pushed up. And it's like at some point you're like, I have no choice. Like, this is what I want. I'm good at it. I'm comfortable with this part. I'm going to put myself in a even more uncomfortable situation because like I'm sitting on five opportunities that I succeeded with and I built my confidence and I got through it just fine.
Mm-hmm.
I celebrated those wins, and so I'm going to go get another one.
I think that's important to talk about, celebrating wins.
Oh yeah.
Some of us who are entrepreneurs, or even just some of us who are like, okay, I did that. What's next? What's next? What's next? It's a certain type of personality, maybe a personality or whatever, but we have to slow down and celebrate the wins. It gives us a moment to anchor that boost of self-confidence. It also gives us a moment to kind of settle into the next level, whatever that's going to be for us in our lives. And so I'm glad you said that because I think we all forget to do that a lot.
Oh, it's vitally important. And it doesn't have to be some massive victory. It's like, if you have a good day, like no one's saying go and throw yourself a birthday party, but like take a moment to celebrate. Like it was a good day today.
Yeah.
I had a good positive day. Here's why it was good. Now I'm going to go to the next and I'm going to repeat it. But celebrate whenever you have good days or hit certain levels, or you took a day where you had absolutely no intention, no desire, just you did not have it in you to do anything with your book, and you wrote a sentence. Celebrate celebrate that you sucked it up and you got something out.
Right.
Because you never know when that's something that you got out, you wake up the next morning and you read it and you're like, oh God, that actually brings up this. And then you have just a lights out tremendous day because you made that little step of progress and it sparked something in you to either do a different direction or do a ton more on a single theme that if you hadn't made that step, it would have been lost.
I think some of us too celebrate the wins with a yeah, but I did my TEDx, but I should have really said that sentence differently, or I should have walked there differently, or I could have done it better, and there's going to be a time for reflection later. And so just celebrate the win. Take a minute and just celebrate the freaking win. You did something cool today. You had a good life. You got out of bed. Like for some people, I got out of bed today because it's a hard life. For other people, it's like, woohoo, I did a TEDx, or I got my book published, or I got a new client, or I started a new job, or I cooked something different for dinner, or whatever it is,
Well, you're right, because those small wins, they tend to add up to some fairly significant victories.
Yeah,
It's like, they always say, well, we lost the battle, but we won the war. It's like, well, those little wins, just like progress, they start to add up.
they do.
And then you get that one breakthrough, and it's like it goes from like a little win to a true victory. And that's where you really celebrate, and that's where, like, if it is, I published my book, or for some people, I took my book, my manuscript, and I put it in the mail to the publisher.
Right.
That's a huge step
Although
for
I'm hoping we get them digitally these days, but yes, the email.
yes, I hit send on that. Yes. But for a lot of people, and because I'm in the process of writing my book, but I've heard a lot of people, they will get right up to that moment and not do it.
Oh, well, that's why when we assign clients, book coaching is part of it, because we have a lot of people. I mean, some people, I have one client, took her 7 years to write a book. That's not normal. I mean, there was life and other things in the middle of that. Sometimes, though, a couple years could be normal, or a year. Obviously, lots of people write books faster than that, but it depends on the person and their life and what they're writing about. But we got lots of people, if you've got like a 2-year process, that get stuck somewhere in there and just kind of ghost us. We're like, hang on, where'd you go? Right?
Right.
Your book coach, come back, tell us what's happening here. Lots of people do a first draft manuscript and hate it. And that's pretty normal. You're not supposed to fall in love with the first draft. You want to fall in love with your last draft. Or at least your publisher wants to fall in love with your last draft, even if you're not quite there yet.
Right. And I think, from people that I've known that are either in the process or have written, like, I think a common thing that I heard from all of them is they kept rewriting different parts of the book. Like, they would get done with a section, and then they would go back and basically just throw it away and like rewrite something because of different thought or something
Right.
like that. And I'm like, why do you keep rewriting it? Like, you're not making any progress.
Right.
This is the fourth version of chapter 3 that I've heard of. Like, you gotta move and keep going.
Yeah, I really recommend not doing any editing or rewriting till you have a first draft manuscript. If you know there's a section you want to go rewrite later, just make a note of it in your manuscript, rewrite this section, but don't do it yet, because the hardest part is really getting your first draft done. And like you're talking about, you'll go around in circles and circles. And then you go back and you look at the whole project. Does it flow? What kind of developmental editing does it need? Which pieces need rewritten, right? But if you do it too soon, you just circle. So yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying. There is a time to rewrite, but it's not too soon. Don't do it early on in the process.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, that's like you said, it's, you don't have to love the final version, but if your publisher does,
Yeah, you
it's
will
like,
too. You work with us, you'll love it and we'll love it.
yeah,
And
there's
that's
your,
the goal, right? That's the
you've
goal.
got someone that's a target audience that says, I love this.
Yeah.
And hey, guess what? No one said you can't write a second book, or a third or a fifth or whatever. Because, that it's just evolution. Like, you're just growing ideas and growing thoughts and stuff like that. And, the biggest thing I think is, like, if you can get to the end and be like, this makes sense, like, I can follow this from beginning to end. Okay, then, I think people tend to over talk, and over explain things, and not that I've read it, but there's a reason probably War and Peace is such a long book. It's because it just explains and goes, there's a lot to it. But there's something to be said for simplifying too, I think.
And there's a place to simplify in a book and a place to expand in a book. And that's part of really, you need to add a story here to help explain, to help make it relatable, to help engage the reader a bit more? Or do you need to just like cut out 80% of these words because you're not saying anything here, right? And so, that's all in editing though. That's not first draft.
Right. Yeah. And it's that's where I think people, regardless of if it's a book or if it's personal development coaching or anything, people get in their own way because they think, well, I can do this on my own, instead of like, I'm going to hire someone who knows this or who has done this, has walked this path, because everything I coach on is my own personal story. And like most everything that you're going to face, could face, like I've either gone through or I read a lot more than most people, and I've taken a lot of ideas and incorporated so that they're part of my story, my teaching. And it's like, if you get to that point, you need to raise your hand and just be like, I need help with this. It's like I said, like, I know I'm not good at technology, but I know people that are.
Yeah.
And so I can read like, Internet for Dummies, but that makes me no good at it. It's going to take me a month what they're going to get done in an hour.
Right.
And I'm just going to get more and more frustrated. Whereas I can pay them a little bit, and an hour later, they're like, here you go. And I'm like, that's exactly what I talked about. So you have to kind of know like how you work, I guess. Like I'm very much a why person. Like I deal with why. I let other people deal with how. But I know that. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, all right, Michelle, we've got a couple minutes left. So why don't you take a couple minutes, wrap everything up, and then we'll kick us out of here.
All right. Well, this has been super cool, Todd. We talked about everything from visibility and getting out of your own way, and small wins and celebrating, and book coaching, and 8-week goals, and the magic of the universe. It seems like it's been a great conversation. People can find me at michellecoaches.com. Hopefully that was a good time to throw that in there. Thank you. And
I'll throw it in again. That's how good it was. I'm going to throw it in there again.
Thank you. And I love to talk with people. I've got coaching, I've got book publishing, I've got group programs, I do retreats. Just come hang out with me. I've got free stuff, lots of free stuff. If you're just thinking about buying a book, I got lots of free courses. So connect with me and we'll get you in the right spot, if there is the right spot for you. And I've just had a blast. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's been my pleasure. It's
I'm just down the road too, right?
Yeah, that's true. We're both in Colorado. So we were, before we started hitting record, it was like, how's the weather with you? It's like, well, wait, you're right down the street. It's basically the same weather that we're having here. But it is Colorado, so there have been days where you could have said it's snowing, and I'm like, the sun's out.
Right. Could have been.
Yeah. But no, Michelle, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on. I know I learned a lot, just different takes on kind of the same things, but, be it personal development, be it book writing, you're going through a lot of the similar processes.
Yeah.
And just, keep in mind, it's like there's a time for editing and there's a time for doing, and knowing which is why Michelle and I are here. So for the viewing audience out there, thank you guys all for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you guys next episode.